Chapel, welcome to this family Bible study hour. We're ready to get back into this book of Hosea. What is it that Hosea means? Salvation. Now, concerning salvation, if you want to know the prime, that is to say, the plan of God as to the plan that He brought forth on how He would make it possible to save His children, you got it right here. And down to the prophetic names even of children of Hosea, that giving a separate meaning where he would love them, at a time he would not love them, and then at a time they would become his children again. Why? Because of salvation. This addresses basically the 10 tribes to the north that were taken into captivity by the Assyrian, which is utilized as a type of Antichrist in the minor prophets as well as the major prophets, Isaiah 14 particularly. And with that, the futurism woven into the scripture, it makes it quite interesting. So with that having been said, chapter 10, the great book of Hosea, verse 1, and it reads, with that word of wisdom from our Father in Yeshua's name, Israel is an empty vine. He bringeth forth fruit unto himself. According to the multitude of his fruit, he hath increased the altars. According to the goodness of his land, they have made goodly images. In other words, what it's saying here, and the word empty probably throws us off, it means, picture a horn and it emptying out. In other words, it's a vine that just really produces fruit. And Israel has always been kind of like good time Charlies, let the good times roll and they drift away from God. And what our Father is saying here, you're very productive, and naturally the answer is easy. Why? Why is Israel? Because it has God's blessings. But what do they do with it? That's his point. They certainly do not utilize it in furthering God's word, but rather quite the opposite, false teachings. Verse 2, their heart or their mind, better translated, is divided. Now shall they be found faulty. He shall break down their altars. He shall spoil their images. Now, what is it when you say someone is double-minded? They're crazy. Their mind is divided, and they can take no comfort from anything that God would do for them, because they do not utilize the blessings of God in the way that he intended. Many might say, well, how they don't build images anymore. Hey, if you have a house that is called a church, and something other than God's word taught line by line, that is to say, being the word of God, not the word of man, you got a place that is not going to be blessed by God. It just isn't going to be. And it isn't difficult to prove that out. Attend one sometime where God's word isn't taught and look around. See how much they're accomplishing according to God's word in the way of those events and things that they should be accomplishing. And of course, we know also in the future his sense. When he says it's faulty, I'm going to spoil it, I'm going to break it down. There is a time coming when Jesus would walk through Jerusalem saying there will not be one stone left standing atop another, meaning the temple or the place in which the false Messiah would choose to inhabit while he's here as the Antichrist. So we see how timely and how many segments there are in this book of Hosea, the time periods referred to, and it all fits like a glove. Verse 3, for now they shall say, we have no king, because we feared not the Lord. What then should a king do for us? Now, actually, in other words, they're not afraid of God. And they said, if God won't hurt us, because ultimately they would think he doesn't exist, then what good, why should we be afraid of a king? And they overlooked the fact that we have a King of Kings and a Lord of Lords. and he will crush. At the same time, he will bless. But those that do not follow and those that insist on going astray, he'll let them. That's why salvation is a very personal thing. Though in this instance, we have a national type salvation given as to how God intends to gather his people. But at the same time, it's very personal. So make sure that you never, never disallow or forget the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, and know that you'd better revere him, you'd better respect him, because after all, he's the one that's in control. But he continues to tell the condition, verse 4. They have spoken words, swearing falsely in making a covenant. Thus judgment, or litigation you might say, springeth up as hemlock in the furrows of the field. Now, if you were familiar with horticulture and you've ever had a garden and it's really weeded perfectly, and you leave it for a couple of 3 weeks and look what happens to it. Weeds take it over. And of course, hemlock is poppy. And when we look to the deeper place today, we know what the poppy has done to this nation, and other kin drugs and so forth that grow in the fields, or that in the fields of people, and then wonder, words spoken falsely. For example, even in the excuse for teaching God's word, some will say, God told me to teach this, or God told me to teach that, and God didn't send them, nor did he speak to them. Well, how does a poor layperson know the difference? By being familiar with God's word. Then you never have to worry about being left out in the cold, and certainly being led astray, because falseness is taught. It is true that all one must do is believe, and to follow up on that belief. But always remember this, when it is oversimplified by some one-verse reverend, there are two Christs. One is true, one is false. Which are you going to follow? The fake comes first. Have you been taught that? If not, you're in trouble. Your salvation is possibly questionable. Verse 5. The inhabitants of Samaria shall fear because of the calves of Bethaven, for the people thereof shall mourn over it, and the priests thereof that rejoice on it, for the glory thereof, because it is departed from it. Now, first of all, let's understand you know what Bethel is. El is God, and Beth, house of God. This is a play on words, Bethaven, meaning rather than being a house of God, a house of nothing. Naught, zero. It void of truth, certainly. And naturally, what does it play on when the words calves are brought in? Because the king of Israel, the 10-tribe kingdom, their capital being Samaria, which means watch mountain, where they were supposed to watch, in the very house that was called God's house, because it was so far to go to Jerusalem, he formed 2 golden calves that they could worship there. Now think of that. Think of it. It's how disgusting. What blasphemy against God himself. And what about these priests? It is a word that you should check out for yourself. Never take my word for it. Kimmerim. Kimmerim was a black-robed Baal priest, not a priest of God. I mean, he could have even been a Levite, or a mongrel Levite, or one claiming to be a Levite, but wearing a Baal priest robe. And many people with collars, not necessarily collars, but priest robes are fair today, establish a Bethaven, a house of emptiness, because you will not hear God's word taught there, aside from a verse here or there sprinkled in, an attempt to legally, using litigation, from their mouth, not God's word, to make it palatable to the person that doesn't know any better. Friend, it happens. It's happening now. It's happening in this generation. Jesus himself, in the 7 things he gave as warnings of the end times, in Mark 13 and Matthew 24, the first statement was, "Let no man deceive you, for many will come claiming to be Christians, Christian preachers, and will deceive many." I don't know. That's not my words. Those are the words of Jesus Christ. Verse 6. "It shall be also carried unto Assyria for a present to King Jareb. Ephraim shall receive shame, and Israel shall be ashamed of his own counsel." You know, we're supposed to receive counsel from only one place, and that is our Father. Our Father's counsel is a wise counsel, and it will all wisdom comes from him, so why not go to the source? Now, of course, we know that Assyria, the Assyrian would take those 10 tribes into captivity, but at the same time, it becomes, as it is written in Isaiah chapter 14, one of the names that is set up as a type of the Antichrist. Isaiah 14:25, to be specific. Your companion Bible will certify that for you. But this goes a little deeper than that. Do you know what Jareb means in the Hebrew tongue? It means the adversary. That's one of Satan's names. And that's going to bring shame of a certainty upon many people that carry the name Christian, but yet are biblically illiterate. Why are they biblically illiterate? Because they have too many chimerems wearing God's robes. Now, if you think I'm trying to point out one specific religion, you're mistaken. Because they're in every church, regardless of what they wear. It's simply a false teacher. What is a false teacher? A false teacher is any teacher that stands in a house of God claiming to be teaching the Word of God, and they never get around to it. That's false. That's a pretender. Verse 7. "As for Samaria, her king is cut off as the foam upon the water." That'd be old Jeroboam. Hey, may think they're hot stuff, may think they're big time Charlies. And naturally, Samaria being the capital of the 10 nations. Do you know what he's saying here? Her king is cut off as the foam upon the water. In other words, when you have high waves, the wind is blowing, you have whitecaps out there, and the foam it's right at the peak. I mean, took the high chair, if you get the point. But then let the wind cease blowing and the whitecaps dissipate, they're gone. And you have nothing but clear water. What he's saying is the king of Israel will be no more, as they knew of a king at that time. You see, the point being is those 10 tribes that went into Assyria and later crossed the Caucasus Mountain and later would end up in Europe, and many yet in America, Canada, all over the Christians all over. They don't even know who they are. So naturally, they have no king. Elected officials? Well, if you want to call them that, verse 8. "The high places also of Aven, the sin of Israel, shall be destroyed." That means the worship places, friend. Don't read over that. "The thorn and the thistle shall come up on their altars," the poppy, "weeds, and they shall say to the mountains, cover us, and to the hills, fall on us." That's when they realized they really thought they were good Christians, but realized in worshiping the first Christ that appears on the scene, they worship Satan, Antichrist. You might say, well, what's this Aven? Well, if we were to put a Beth in front of that, you should know what Beth Aven, you got it. It means a house of naught. It means emptiness. Those that thought they were hearing God's word, but it was a bunch of hot air. Now, if you think I'm knocking all teachers, you're mistaken, because a real teacher is a teacher that teaches God's Word, and there are many around the country. And God bless them. If you're fortunate enough to have one, you're very fortunate indeed. But if you're in a wind house, then you got trouble. And I don't have to tell you whether you are or not. You know whether God's Word is being taught where you supposedly attend church or not. Verse 9. O Israel, thou hast sinned from the days of Gibeah. There they stood. The battle in Gibeah against the children of iniquity did not overtake them. They didn't make a stand. Do you remember what Gibeah is? It was the likeness that we should be in the end times when a Levitical priest, his wife went whoring a little bit. He forgave her, went after her, and on the way back home to a mountain in Ephraim, his country, to whereby his home was, then in a town of our own people, where he should have been safe, a group of perverts come up and take his wife and another daughter of the man of the house, and they kill them. But nobody would make a stand. Nobody cared. Perversion was fine. There it remains. And he says it remains to this day. Verse 10. It is in my desire that I should chastise them. Boy, are they going to get it. And the people shall be gathered against them when they shall bind themselves in their two furrows. Two furrows, and no doubt this is a play. The way you would understand is to go back to those two golden calves. Two furrows, kind of a double-minded, so to speak. And anything that is double-minded or that has two standards, then unfortunately double-minded many times is to be yoked to sin itself, as these were. And in a sense, there's only one way you can unyoke yourself from sin, and that is to put on the proper yoke and to not be unequally yoked. And don't want anybody rushing out to get divorces or anything. I'm speaking in a spiritual sense. Verse 11. And Ephraim is as an heifer that is taught and loveth to tread out the corn. But I passed over upon her fair neck. I will make Ephraim to ride. Judah shall plow, and Jacob shall break his clods. In other words, Ephraim has had a good deal with the blessings of God. The heifer that got to tread the corn, that meant right on the thrashing floor. That wasn't really that hard of work for them. It wasn't like pulling those old traces and plowing a deep furrow. All she had to do was walk around and tramp out corn, get a little mouthful here and there. She wasn't muzzled and so forth. What he's saying is, she may think she has it easy, but I'm going to make it tough on her. I'm going to make her get out there and hit the hot sun for a change. Well, they have since the Assyrian captivity. Many of them, again, I will add, they have no conception or idea who they are or why things are as they are. They just listen to a one-verse Charlie, spin yarns, and feel they're safe in God's hands, and they're so biblically illiterate that they couldn't even spot. They could no more tell you what the second book of Nebuchadnezzar has to say or what the subject matter is than they could fly to the moon. They couldn't. And I suppose that's a little pop test, because many that nodded their heads and say, that's right, there is no book of second Nebuchadnezzar. All right? It doesn't exist. Verse 12. Sow to yourself in righteousness, reap in mercy. That's love. Break up your fallow ground, For it is time to seek the Lord till he come and rain righteousness upon you. That is the latter rain. It's falling today. Our Father's truth, and that he does reap in love. You do the same. What you sow, that's what you're going to reap. What you break up and prepare, that will be yours. That you plant, that you shall reap the benefits thereof. Understand what I'm saying? For it is love that God desires from his children. Salvation breaks away into a one-on-one event. That is to say, between you and your Father. That he desires your love. He desires your righteousness. That means to do right. Don't make a stand. Stand for the Father. All right? Verse 13. You have plowed, or sown would be a better translation. You have sown wickedness. You have reaped iniquity. In other words, you're going to get what you sow. You have eaten the fruit of lies, because thou didst trust in thy way, in the multitude of thy mighty men. You put your trust in man's strength. You know, you take the free world today. We have an awesome army, many times called the United Nations, the forces thereof, or NATO, or break it down to our individual nations. You better not just put your trust there. And God bless each and every one of them. I know where many of them put their trust. But if you plant falsehood, if you plant false teachings, then you're going to reap the benefit thereof. In other words, if your crop of lies sows and plants a false gathering back to Christ, one that isn't biblical, then you're going, and if you teach that out of chronological order, you're going to reap the lie. It's going to happen to you. And not only that, but it will happen to many that put their trust in someone that they can say, it's a mighty teacher. I don't care what teacher it is and how mighty you might think he is or she. You check them out in the Word of God, whether it be this man or any other man. Put your trust in God. Our Father's in control. You see, he has written long ago what would happen today, what will happen tomorrow. And that's exactly as it will come to pass. Verse 14. Therefore shall a tumult arise among the people, and all thy fortresses shall be spoiled as Shalman spoiled Beth Arbel in the day of battle. The mother was dashed in pieces upon her children. Now, let's break these words back so that you understand. Shalman is a fire worshiper. A child of God is not a fire worshiper, okay? That would be more like Molochism. And you know what Beth means? That's house in the Hebrew tongue. But boy, this isn't Bethel, it's Beth Arbel. What does that mean? Ambush. Not house of God, but a house of ambush. A house that sets you up for the ambush that will cause the mother and the children spiritually to be dashed to pieces because the true Christ is not taught there. Verse 15. Play with fire, you're going to get burned, especially if it's strange fire, which is implied here. 15. So shall Bethel, that's the house of God, do unto you because of your great wickedness. In a morning, that is to say, in one day, in one morning, shall the king of Israel utterly be cut off. In other words, the official that will be standing in that place at that day will be cut off because the world will go into one-worldism. Cut off in what way? Destroyed? No. but made a part of a one world system controlled by the dragon, which is to say the son of perdition, which is to say the spurious Messiah. It's going to happen, and it will happen in one day. All it takes is his appearance upon the scene. And that's well recorded as to how that will take place in Revelation chapter 12, verses 6 and 7, when Michael cast him from heaven and says, "Woe to you on earth." And through the preceding verses, beginning with verse 6 and 7, he casts out the dragon, and then he is called all of the names of the offices that he holds: the dragon, the serpent, Satan, in the acts that follow, and many people read over it. They're not aware of it, that he's all one in one. The son of perdition, the son that confuses, the son that destroys. I speak of Satan. What happens then? Chapter 11, verse 1. When Israel was a child, then I loved him and called my son out of Egypt. Do you understand that that is prophecy? Now, you've heard me mention many things other than simply Hosea's life. This has to do with the Son of Sons. And you will find it in the 2nd chapter of Matthew. I want you to turn there with me. Chapter 2, the great book of Matthew, and verse 15. Just so you think I'm not reading prophecy into the minor prophet. Let's see what the great book of Matthew in the New Testament, chapter 2, verse 15, states. And it reads, "And was there until the death of Herod," that is to say Joseph going into Egypt with Mary and the son, "that it might be fulfilled which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet," what prophet? Hosea, saying, "Out of Egypt have I called my son." And there you have that son and that calling, the word spoken by the prophet. Way back in the Old Testament, Hosea, the book of salvation, because the subject of the Son was the Savior, he that brings salvation. How could it be a book of salvation without mention of that Son? Just to get you up to speed, all right? Verse 2. "And they called them, so they went from them, they sacrificed unto Baalim, and burned incense to graven images." The more I called, our Father is saying, the further away they went. The more truth is taught, sometimes the further it drives some people away from it. Mainly, one of the reasons they'll turn and begin to fight against the truth. And that in itself is blasphemy and drives them much further away from the truth. Verse 3. "I taught Ephraim also to go, taking them by their arms, but they knew not that I healed them." In other words, Ephraim, again I will remind you, being the larger of those 10 tribes, the entirety of the 10 tribes are called Ephraim many times. He said, "I took them, I led them," and he has down through the years, even to this day. He has guided them, and they don't know it. They're not aware of it, that there's much more to God's Word than they have been taught. That He still blesses those people that would become, by that covenant made by God, as numerous as the stars of heaven and the sands of the sea. That He would be with them, He would bless them. But He says they don't even realize it. You might wonder, well, what about this fruitful vine we have in the Americas? We produce more grain and crops than we can use. Well, pull a coin out of your mouth, out of your pocket. Look at it. What does it say on that coin? "In God we trust." So you see, some of our founding fathers knew more about what was happening, perhaps, than a certain priest would, or would-be priest, would-be preachers, concerning the migrations of God's children. Some of them don't care, but He will continue to heal, because the plowing and the sowing has begun. And our Father's word shall come to pass exactly as it is written. As sure as 600 and something years before the sun left Egypt, it was prophesied, written exactly that way. And so it shall come to pass, those things that are written in that part of this prophecy that applies to today. He said, I guided them. They went where I wanted to, and they didn't even know it. They didn't realize I was doing it to them. Some of you have had that experience in your lifetime where you had a moment you wondered why that you had decided to take this path. Verse 4, I drew them with cords of a man, of Adam, all right? With bands of love. That's to say, with ropes of love, I pulled them. And I was to them as they that take off the yoke on their jaws, and I laid meat unto them. Now, this is difficult to understand. The yoke itself was held on by, let's call it a throat latch, that held the yoke down so tight so that the yoke could not slip up to bruise shoulders and so forth, but it made it a very heavy burden, or a tight burden held against them. But when they would partake of food, a owner that had compassion, I'm going to just call it a throat latch. That won't quite fit, but it will come as near to harnessing as we can get it today, okay? And I guess it's closer maybe than I might think. That loosing the throat latch to get the yoke back, then they can eat in more comfort. What he said is, in a sense, allow me, he said, even while I fed them, and even while they were eating, I placed my hand under the yoke to hold up the weight from them. I made it easy for them. Why? God loves His children. It is very difficult for this person to understand the way God has blessed the Americas and the world, as far as that's concerned, the Christian world. The way He has blessed us, how that they cannot love our Father, for nothing is by accident. Any more than 600 years before the fact, He would predict by a prophet that he would call His Son out of Egypt at a given time. How man cannot understand that there is a supernatural being, a creator, who had sent this letter to them personally, and it comes to pass exactly as it's written. And anyone that looks at this nation especially and cannot realize that God has His guiding hand upon her, then is in a heap of hurt as far as being familiar spiritually with our Father. That is so tender, and I receive so much love and comfort from that fact, that even as a man would take a dumb ox that worked for him, and his love would go to his own animals that did his work, that he would loosen that yoke and lift it, thinking of their comfort, not only of his own. That our Father thinks of your comfort without you even knowing it. That's what He's saying here. How can someone not love Him when He cares to that point? What am I saying? That He even cares for those that are ignorant of the fact. That's something. It means a lot to me. I hope it does to you. We'll pick this up in the next lecture. Don't miss it. All right, bless your heart. You listen a moment, won't you please?